Hey guys, I'm here today to share with you my top 10 albums of the year. Now, this has been a great year, a lot of great records. It was a difficult list to put together. Please use the comment section and let me know what your top 10 albums of the year are. But before you do that, check out the ones that I feel deserve to be in this kind of a list. So I'm going to start off at number 10 with Winter Suntime 2 out on Nuclear Blast. Now, there was a lot of anticipation behind this album. The fan base was excited when the news came out that the album was coming out in August. But at the same time, a lot of people were wondering, is it going to meet the hype? Is it going to meet the expectations? The bar is very high. I felt when I first listened to the album, the first couple of times I went through the record, I felt like it didn't meet my expectations. I actually felt like the album felt a little bit flat. And one of the reasons for it was I didn't connect with the Japanese influence that this album has. It just felt overwhelming to me. It just felt like too much of it. The more I listened to the album, the more I understood it, the better I digested, the more integrated it felt into the songwriting, into the music, into the atmosphere, into the lyrics, into the vocals. The better the album came, the better the album became. Like, this album just started to grow on me, and then I started to see the strength of the album for what it really is. And by the time I really fell in love with the record, I also felt this sense of being a bittersweet experience, because now that I connected to the album, I also realized that there's no more time, there's no more longing or waiting for when the next time album is going to come out. There's no time 3. This is it. So the album has that ability to finally be here, and you're able to enjoy it and you're able to appreciate it, but then also realize that some of the pleasure that came with waiting for it and waiting for that day where you could finally listen to it, now it's over. Now you just get to listen to it anytime you want and really enjoy it, and perhaps listen to both time records back to back so you can get the full essence, because I honestly feel like this album plays out a lot better if you listen to both records back to back. At number 9, we have Soulsa with Hin Hegel Vol out on Century Media. This is actually their first album released with Century Media Records. And one of the reasons why this album made my top 10 list is because I feel like it's the band's best record. And the reason why I feel that way is because it comes across as a compilation without being a compilation. Taking in influences from every single record that they released, bringing in all of the DNA of the band, all the growth, all the evolution that Soulsa has had over the years, and then put all of that into a single album is how this record came across. You have more modern Soulsa elements in the record. You have older Soulsa elements into the record. You have some songs that have more of a black metal influence, more driven, more punk, still some atmospheric tracks. There's a little bit of everything for everybody. But when you look at every single song on this record, there's not a single track that you cannot associate with the discography of the band. And that's what sets this album apart. At number 8, we have Dark Tranquility with In Time Signals out on Century Media Records. This was also an album that I had some question marks coming in because of the lineup changes. You're never really sure how that's going to impact the songwriting and therefore impact the album itself. I must say, this is a Dark Tranquility record, but it felt to me a lot darker and a lot heavier than its predecessors. And that helps break the linearity when it comes to a discography. You want the band to stay as close as possible to their DNA, but at the same time, you want to give them enough room to evolve and change. And having new members in the band obviously going to have an impact in that songwriting process, in the ability in which they create Dark Tranquility music. And I feel like In Time Signals perhaps has a dual meaning, but one of the meanings behind it, at least for me, is that it signals an end of an era of Dark Tranquility, but it also signals a beginning of a new era of Dark Tranquility. At number 7, we have Swallow the Sun with Shining out on Century Media Records. I feel like this is an extremely polarizing record with the fan base. Either you love it or you hate it. There's no in between. I love it. And I love it because I always felt like Swallow the Sun is one of those bands that has music that completely drains the listener. I cannot go through a record more than once. I listen to an album from beginning to end, I need to put it away, and I need to stay away for a while before I go back to it again. Listen to a song here and there, it's a different story, but digesting a full-length album from start to finish, this band makes it very difficult because of the nature of the music, the way it makes you feel, the way it's presented. this album still keeps that melancholy of the band alive and well. It still keeps a lot of the DNA of the band there. It just presents it from a different angle. And because it's from a different angle, it comes with a little bit more brightness, comes with a little bit more light in it. It's not as dark, and it's definitely not as a cumbersome album as some of the previous ones were. So the playability of the record definitely sets the album apart. And when you talk about a band that has a strong discography, but it feels very linear across that discography, having this little ripple in that discography, I think it's a great thing for the band and for the fans. At number 6, we have Geria with Coma out on Season of Mist, one of the best black metal albums of 2024. Also, one of the least black metal albums of 2024. What I mean by that is that the band took a lot of chances with this record. They were not afraid of going outside of the boundaries of black metal and perhaps redefine what black metal should be all about. In my opinion, black metal is attitude, is your personal attitude that you bring into the music. Obviously, there are some cornerstone elements in the sound, in the vocals, but to me it's more about a state of mind, it's more about a cultural aspect, and definitely also the attitude that comes with it. And if there's one thing that Coma has, is a lot of attitude. They were not afraid of trying different angles, different perspectives, in order to allow the band to evolve, to grow, and to continue to push the envelope of what their sound is all about. I appreciate bands that don't want to create two albums that sound the same. They want to stay as close as they can to their DNA, but allow other elements to influence that DNA and that growth. And this album from Geria definitely showcases all of the above. At number 5, we have Cemetery Skyline with Nordic Gothic out on Century Media Records. This was the band's debut album, a super group. I just didn't expect gothic rock and gothic metal to be as strong in 2024 as they are, and this album is definitely one of those strong records that the year has given us. I love this album from top to bottom, from having Michael's clean vocals throughout the entire record, to great songwriting that came from a guitar player and a keyboardist, which gives you a completely different dynamic from a lot of other albums within the same sound, within the same genre. I think that's what helps set this album apart. That combination of keyboards and guitars creates a different sound, creates a different experience, creates a different songwriting approach, and that really helps define this record, define this band, and put them in a category almost of their own. At number 4, we have Tribulation with Sub Rosa in Eternum out on Century Media Records. This album from Tribulation, in my humble opinion, is outstanding. One of the most outstanding things about this record is the vocals, actually, because when you listen to the album, it almost feels like there's a different vocalist on every single song. The dynamic of the vocal delivery, the vocal presence, and how well connected with the lyrics and the themes of the songs, that to me is something phenomenal. I haven't really seen that on a record, especially on a record that's not a concept record, so I've never seen an approach like this, and I felt like it worked tremendously well, because you have everything working towards making the songs the best that they can be, not using any uniform ideas, not creating a sense of repetition throughout the album, but rather understanding what the themes are, what is the idea between each and every single song, what do we want to represent, what do we want to offer our listeners with every single track, and then put everything together from lyrics, sound, and vocal delivery to be able to bring those songs to life individually, but somehow still find a red line that connects them all throughout the entire record. It's a winning formula as far as creating and constructing a record with these sort of condiments. At number 3, we have Jotun with Kinship out on Metal Blade Records. Wow, this album is outstanding. The vocals are phenomenal. One of the best vocalists in metal right now in this band. And the sound of this record is something that allows you to absolutely immerse yourself in it and lose yourself in it. It's a great sounding record. It's an album, it's a storytelling record that tells stories through sound and through lyrics and obviously through vocals. I absolutely fell in love with this record from the get-go. It's a very easy, considering how complex and how contexted and how textured this album is very easy to digest. But it's an album that you don't fully appreciate at the first go. And I don't think you ever fully appreciate an album like this. I think every time you're going to listen to Kinship, you're going to discover something that you hadn't noticed before. And that is the beauty of an album like this. It's an album that keeps on giving. It keeps on growing. It keeps on evolving. It keeps on reshaping itself. Phenomenal album. It makes you feel comfortable in the listening experience. Allows you to see simplicity where things perhaps are constructed in a very complex way. And that is such a great way of presenting an album to a fan base. At number 2, we have Konan and Feba with Die Urka Trastofi. Wow, I have a hell of a time with this one. By the way, this was an album that originally I not even reviewed on the channel, but I discovered this band through a request, through a Patreon request. We did a video, and from that video, both Antonio and I fell in love with the band and went into the album, listened to the record, went back, listened to the debut album, but I just kept going back to this album time and time and time and time and time again. It's by far the best black metal album of the year. Century Media is the label behind the band, and I felt like this album went under the radar, almost like a U-boat. It went under the radar for such a long period of time, but I'm so glad somebody pointed us towards it, because not listening to this record in 2024 would have been a disservice to heavy music. I feel like everybody should take their time and listen to this album. These guys are phenomenal. The way they approach songwriting, the way they approach music, the way they approach their presentation as far as the live show is concerned, the graphics on the vinyl for this record and on the previous one, everything is intertwined. Nothing is by accident. I love the way they put together this record. It's not every day that you see a German band singing about World War I, so that on itself is something to be noticed. But at the end of the day, it's not about the gimmicks. It's about how good the music is, how good the songwriting is, and I feel like this album was by far one of the best albums that I heard the entire year. At number one we have Fleshgod Apocalypse with Opera out on Nuclear Blast. The reason I picked this album as my number 1 is because it's the one that I listen to the most throughout the year. And I think if I'm listening to an album from start to finish more than any other record, therefore it has to be my favorite album of the year. Now, it may not be the best album of the year for everybody, but it is the best album of the year for me. And this is my list, so I get to choose who stays at number 1 or who gets to number 1. Now, this album came following a very tragic accident that could have been even more tragic, that obviously impacted the band, impacted Francesco first and foremost, but it impacted the band. So having that as the backdrop and then listening to this record that really describes, this to me is a concept album, because it really describes everything that he went through from the accident to recovery. So listening to this record, you're getting a snapshot of what it was to walk in his shoes throughout that period of time. And that comes with a certain level of emotion. That comes with a certain level of going a little bit deeper into the psyche of a band or of a musician, and almost seeing the world through their eyes. And I think that's the ultimate goal, or it should be the ultimate goal for any artist, to create art that not only resonates with the viewer or the listener, but that allows the listener or the viewer to see the world not through their own eyes, but through the eyes of who created the art. And I think this is one of the records that does that throughout the entire year the best. I don't see there's any other album that did it better than they did. Having also Veronica do a lot more vocals, and not operatic vocals, but clean vocals, clean singing on this album was such a genius move, because her quality is just almost unlimited. At least it feels that way to me. And to just pigeonhole her into one single role, it would be a disservice to the band. So allowing her to come out of the shell and be a little bit more of who she can really be also allows this record and allows the band to go in a lot of different directions that they were not necessarily able to go to before. So I look at that accident almost like an epiphany, or a little bit of a wake-up call, not just for what they could do or what Francesco can do in his own personal life, and really take every day as if it was his last, as if it's been a gift given to him, but also allow him to see the way he writes music and the way he works with those, not uses, but works with those around him in a different format, so that everybody can have a strong contribution to the art that they're creating, and we can see everybody's brush stroke on this canvas throughout this entire record. I think that's a beautiful thing to see on this album. You see every musician in the band having a clear impact on either the songs, the sound, the lyrics, the harmonies. So this is a very personal record, by someone who's surrounded by friends, and that idea really came to life with Opera. Outstanding album by Fleshgod Apocalypse, the best record the band has ever released, in my opinion, and I feel like this sets the bar really high for them as far as what the follow-up is going to be. This is it. These are my top 10 albums from 2024. You have the comment section below. Let me know what your favorite albums are. Hit me up in those comments, and I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.